Let's encrypt our resources. Alright, so if I go ahead and take a look at my control node here, it's got a script on it. The script is relatively empty. We just have an exported variable, some file paths, and a password that I can use later. Right, and then I have my own class that I just called up myRes. It's extending resource. It has an export of cars. It just has 3 values: Viper, Mustang, Camaro. Right, so when I look at it in the inspector, right, I can just go to my export of my data here, drop down, new, myRes, and I can open up the cars and we can see it's got data in it. Right, so we have a custom resource, and it holds some kind of data for our game. Now, we want to do 2 things. We want to save our resource so that we can load it in the future, and this could just be general data for your game. It could be your entire game saved. Doesn't really matter what it is, right? And we want to encrypt it so that we can reduce the chance of somebody tampering with it or cheating with it. Whatever your reasons are for encrypting your file. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go into our ready function. So func ready. I'm going to use my utils class to do a saving and saving complete printing out. And what we want to do to save our my mind's escaping me here for a moment. Our resource, here we go, is we just want to call resource saver dot save, and then we'll pass in our resource, which is going to be my data, and we give it a path, which I'm using my temp path here, which is just called decrypted resource. When it's done, but of course you can always type in whatever you want for yours. And if I go ahead and run this, take a look. Sorry, I want to delete that, rerun that again. So I got my file here inside of my user location. If I go ahead and open this, I'll run it with Notepad, no problem. There we go. We have our resource. We can see the base script here. We can see the contents: Viper, Mustang, Camaro. We got the UID. We can see it's a resource, right? So we got different information here. And if you want to encrypt that further to make it more difficult, we can do that. And what we're basically going to do is we're going to save this file, and then we're going to open it, encrypt its contents, and resave it at the end of it. That's basically what we're going to be doing here. Right, so what we're going to do then is I'm going to get rid of this save here, and I'm going to create a function called save encrypted resource. Right, and that's going to take a data, which is a resource type, and a password that you want to pass in. Right, so what you want to pick there doesn't really matter. It's completely up to you. You probably heard noisy there in the background. But the first thing we're going to do is exactly what we did previously, right? We're going to save that resource. So all this is familiar to you. And then what we're going to do here is we're actually going to open up the file. So I'm going to say var file is file access dot open the temp path, and then pass in we want to go into read mode, file access dot read. There we go. And then we want to get out the contents of it as a buffer, right? So var buffer equals file dot get buffer, and in here we need to pass in the length. So for that, we'll just do file dot get length, so we can get the length of that file. All right, pull up the buffer from that. Why is this airing out? I'm missing a close. Oh, I have one extra close one up there. There we go. All right, so we got the buffer. If you want to be extra safe, you can go ahead and close it manually. You shouldn't have to anymore, but if you want to, you can. So with this, we've opened up our resource file. We've grabbed the contents that are inside of it. We've got it stored as a buffer, and now we want to encrypt this data. So to do this, we can go ahead and I'll create a spacer there just to separate these two functionalities. So I'll do var encrypted file, and that's going to be our file access. Only instead of open this time, we're going to do open encrypted and pass in that path, right? So the temp path. I'm sorry, no. We're going to be doing the save path now that we put in there. So this is going to have our encrypted data. So in my case, it's encrypted resource. And we're going to pass in the write argument, right? File access.write. That way we can actually write to it. And because we're using open encrypted, we have to pass in another argument, which is going to be your password. Right up there for my function. There we go. And we're getting a little long there, so I'll just split this down and make it a little easier to see. There we go. So now that we have the encrypted file, we're opening up this encrypted, I guess technically the file. Now we need to store the data into it. So we're going to do encrypted file dot store dot store buffer, and we're going to pass in the buffer variable, right? So the data that we got out of the resource, all of the resources data, right? Makes sense. And if you want to be extra safe, again, you can go ahead and close it manually, close the file manually. And then the last thing we need to do is clean up. So I'm just going to use dir access and remove the old decrypted file because we don't need that. The purpose of this is to make it so the user can't modify it. So I'm just going to remove the old file in there. All right. So if we were to run that now here, we're not going to see anything different visually here, but if we go ahead and open this, you see this is now what our file looks like. So it's definitely a lot harder to get into. The first thing they're going to need to do is be able to decrypt this file. And then from there, then be able to try and modify the resource. So you got that extra step, that extra layer of protection in there if you're trying to protect your resource files or your saves, whatever it is that you're doing. And likewise now we need to decrypt this, right? Because encrypting is cool and all, but we need to be able to read it again when we do it. So what we're going to do, space in there, and just like I did before, I'm going to do a loading, and I'm actually going to put a pause in there so we can see it. Yelling at me because this function doesn't exist. It's fine. I'll do that so I can scroll up. So I'm just going to wait 10 seconds so we can visually see it. Apologies there. I'll change it to 5 for the video. And we're going to print out my logs here. Loading. We're going to load the encrypted resource by passing in your password. I'm storing that as a new resource. Then once loading is complete, then I'm going to print out the data from there so we can see that it is being correctly loaded. And of course, from here, we can then access my data and assign that directly to the loaded, or do my data equals this new data, whatever it is you want to do. Right, so how do we actually load this? Well, we just have to do the reverse of what we did prior. Right. So instead, what we did before, right? We saved it, and then we opened it up, got the buffer, and closed it. So what we're doing now is we're going to open that encrypted file, right, from the save path instead of temp. We're going to read instead of write, and of course we got to pass in our password for it. That's used to decrypt this file. For the buffer, same thing. We're going to get the buffer, which is based on the file length, and if you want to be safe, close it yourself. And now we need to create the temporary file that we're going to use here. So temp file, we're just going to open up our temp path, which is going to be our decrypted path. Remember, because this is our decrypted resource .res. We're going to write because we need to save. Inside of our temp file, we'll store that buffer that we got out of it. Last things we need to do, simply, we need to load that resource now, right? So resource loader.load that temp path. This is stored as our variable called res. And we can go ahead and return that res. That's going to be our data for our resource. But before we do that, what do? Remove that encrypted file, right? The encrypted one. So we're going to remove from the save path. And then what we're basically doing is replacing the encrypted file with a decrypted one. So if I run that, we take a look, we can see we have the encrypted resource. Give it a few seconds. And now we have the decrypted. And if we run that and take a look, we can see it's just the resource file once again, just like it used to be. And if we look down into our output, we can see the cars array being printed out: Viper, Mustang, Camaro. Now let us modify this just so we can see that extra step. So I'm going to go to my control and let's modify it. Let's add an element. And for here, let's just go with, God, there's so many vehicles, and yet I wouldn't put on the spot. I just can't come up with any of them. You know, let's just put Lambo in there. All right, so we got Lambo. And we can go ahead and save it. Save and complete. Fantastic. Now I'm going to go to my function here. I'm going to, not do that. I'm just going to comment out saving. So all we have is the loading. And instead of printing out this data, I'm going to go ahead and assign this. Delete Lambo out of here. So we have the default again, Viper, Mustang, Camaro. And I'm just going to do my data equals new data. And we'll see when we go into, in fact, I'll put this timer back in just so we can have a better look at it. So, all right, so you can see it gets in there. And I did notice that Lambo was still here on the side. So I went ahead and deleted that to get the default back in here. And you can see down here, it still prints out with our Lambo. So there's how you can save a resource, and there's how you can encrypt that saved resource. I was going to say saved. And then there's how you can load it by decrypting it and then loading the resource data from it. All right, that's it. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.